Today's topic is for men and women in the military. We're in the studio with Alex in the Air Force, a fighter pilot. If you're in the military and you have a leader that you don't always agree with, it can be hard to lead from what we call the second chair. In other words, they're in the first chair, you're in the second chair. If you don't agree with them, maybe in some cases you don't respect them. Alex, I don't want you to name names here, but have you ever been in that situation?
You bet. I think everybody who's been in the military has had, either a leader or a commander at different levels where it's just hard to follow that guy. Unfortunately for us, it's one of those things where you are put in a position and you don't get to choose your boss really in any job, but specifically in the military, and they trade out a lot. So it's just something you're going to have to deal with over the course of your career.
Yeah, and this is a situation, like you said, that's not just a military issue. It really, once you get out of the military, you're going to have bosses that you don't always agree with. And so I think learning some of these principles in the military will not only serve you well in the military, but it'll serve you well once you get out. So I like the first point that you make. You've got to learn how to communicate up the line of command. What do you mean by that?
Absolutely. So it's pretty easy to get frustrated with bosses or commanders out there because they tend to want to volunteer for a lot of things, right? They want to please their boss. They have a boss just like he or she is your boss. And so, depending on what service you're in, maybe that's a guy who's got a helium arm where he's constantly raising his hand for everything, making it sort of difficult on your unit. So you got to be able to communicate up the chain of command. And one of the ways to do that is to not be a yes man, but also not to be a no man. So you want to always be the guy that says yes to everything without thinking about it, but you also don't want your first response to be no. Your job is to communicate pros and cons and effectively package that message of, hey boss, here's the costs, here's the benefits, how do we do this moving forward? And then ultimately, they're the ones who get to make the decision.
Okay, so that's up the chain of command, but then the second thing is you've got to guard your tongue when it comes to communicating down the chain of command.
Right, so let's say you did communicate those benefits and those costs, and the decision that came out of that is not the one that you would make, or not the one that you and your peers would make, and the commander chose to go in a different direction. At some point, you have to be the guy that goes, all right, I have a level in the squadron, in the unit, whatever you have, and you've got to support your boss to the lower levels. So maybe amongst your stratification of leaders, you talk about the strategic effects and everything that's going on in that unit, but when it comes to the people below you, at some point the boss has made a choice and your job is to get on board with that choice.
Really, and that's the next point is get on board or get out of the way, right? It's not helpful. I mean, you should argue and debate as much as you can in those proper places, but once a decision has been made, you got to get on board or get out of the way.
This is so tough. I've fallen into this a lot of times because my opinion is obviously not always taken by the boss. He takes a different direction, but he made the decision, and you are a subordinate. You're a follower in the military, so when that decision is made, your job is to execute. It's tough, and it's very easy to be the guy who doesn't want to get on board or is in the background sort of continuously sport bitching about the decision that has been made, all for really the denigration of the mission, right? At some point, the decision is made, you got to go, or if you're in a blockade to that, just move out of the way.
Yeah, and I like this last point. Yeah, this is kind of an overarching point. At the end of the day, don't let your boss fail. Even if you don't agree with his or her decisions, your job is to support your boss as much as you can for the sake of the mission.
Right. Again, you're not always going to like your boss. Command tours in the military are usually pretty short, 1 to 2 years at the max, and so it's easy to sort of like just let the ship burn around you and outweight your boss, but that is not your job. Your job is not to let your boss fail. So ultimately, when it comes down to it, you don't like the direction they're going, but you've been told to execute, it's still your job to make that unit successful. So just do it.
Yeah, that's good. Well, so those are some of Alex's tips on leading from the second chair in the military. Now remember, if you're doing this with a group or a mentor, use those questions below, talk about this, and we'll see you in the next topic.